In today's lesson, we're going to move on to the next part. We always start off with every system with what are the parts of the system. Second part we always deal with is how the system works together. How do all the parts work together to achieve the function? So that's what we're going to do today. How do parts of the nervous system function together? More specifically, we're going to look at how the three types of neurons we've learned, sensory, relay, and motor neurons work together. The word that I would like to introduce to you today is called neural circuit. Neural, anything to do with neurons, your nervous system. When you see the word a circuit, it means kind of like in physics, where you have an electrical circuit, you connect wires with batteries. A neural circuit is a circuit made up of many neurons joined together to conduct nerve impulses. The purpose of today's lesson is to really see how all the different neurons connect with each other to form such a circuit. Because in reality, neurons by themselves, not all of them are long enough to convey information from one point to another. We need to connect them together, like rail tracks connecting to each other in your body, so that we can conduct information across longer distances and to where it needs to go. So a very classic example of a very simple neural circuit comprises of a sensory neuron connected to a relay neuron, then connected to a motor neuron. You find that the flow of information is also always from sensory, relay to motor. That's how things flow. Things don't flow from your motor and then backward to your sensory, because biologically it doesn't make sense, right? The sensory neuron is to detect a stimulus. Today, I'm going to share with you the function of neural circuits. In reality, even as you are taking notes right now, you are doing voluntary actions. At the same time, as your heart is beating, that's all involuntary actions. All of these actions rely on neural circuits, the connection between sensory, relay, and motor. Let's begin first with your voluntary action. Actually, we have a very simple test that scientists do to test how fast you can create a voluntary action. And that is done through a ruler drop test. Can you pick up your ruler right now? If you do not have a ruler, anything that is long enough that you can hold in your hand and drop is also good enough. This activity will require a buddy of some sort. Okay, see if you can find someone to do it with you. You cannot do it alone. Okay? The reaction test goes something like that. Okay, we borrow. So let's say I borrow Shermane's one. Okay, Shermane, let's say she is the person we are going to test. The other person, who's a friend, you will drop the ruler. Okay, so Shermane, you get ready up. So to test how fast you can create a voluntary response to catch the ruler, okay, I'm just going to try out. So Shermane, catch it when it drops, okay? So Shermane did not create a voluntary response fast enough. We try again. With practice, she can generate a voluntary response faster. Faster? Okay. Then we look at the point where she catched it on. Actually, the lower the point of the ruler you manage to catch it, the better you are able to, faster you are able to generate a voluntary response. The closer you are to the end of the ruler, the slower you generate a voluntary response. That's one way you can test how fast you create a voluntary response. Another way to say it is a reaction time. See how fast is your reaction time. I'd like you to try it now for fun. You can do it a few times, and if you notice, actually your reaction time will improve with practice. Voluntary action can improve with practice. I do it now. Do it now. Ready? Go ahead. Okay, where are you? You got mistakes, right? Let's do it again. Okay, screw up to the same. You're getting faster, right? Okay, you are improving, right? Your voluntary action. Are you getting better or getting worse? If you do it yourself, notice you can catch it quite fast. Oh! Kyra, you hit here, don't feel pain one. You should get it fixed. Okay. You all got faster? Okay, who here got slower the more times you did it? Okay, thank God. Who got better as you progress? Got better? Okay. Voluntary actions, where do they come from? Come from your brain. You control these voluntary actions. If I show you a neural circuit of a voluntary action, you will find that, notice, you don't really need a sensory neuron to initiate a voluntary response. For involuntary responses, usually require some sort of input, a stimulus. But look at a voluntary action. All you require is to think. Okay, one may argue as such, right? You may say that, hey, but sure, don't I need to see the ruler first, then I can initiate a response, right? Okay, then my reply to you is actually, after you saw the ruler, you had the choice to not catch it either, right? So truly, when you initiate a voluntary response, the starting point is from your brain. Okay? What influences whether you start thinking or not could have been whether you saw something. But then the choice is still yours, so it starts from the brain. Very often you need some sort of a relay neuron to be able to reach a motor neuron and will then control some effector. In this case, your muscles. The beauty about voluntary responses is that actually with training you can get better at it. In fact, you get faster, right? Your reaction time improves. Same goes with your revision and studies. The more you do the same thing, the faster you get at it. When you train yourself on this kind of thing, actually that's how memory is trained also. When you train your memory, nerve impulses shoot faster down the same route. Yes?
So like, the neuron capacity.
Oh, okay, what do you mean by capacity? Can you elaborate?
Like, you know they say like, oh, if you close your eyes for very long, you can hear better.
You hear what?
You hear.
Oh, hear better.
So is it like, because the neuron inside got less thing than one thing?
Oh, perhaps. I think what Haya is talking about, I think there's some truth in it. When you close your eyes, you're shutting off one stimuli, sight, light, right? So now you are stimulating less of your brain that receives sight. Perhaps your brain now is more focused to focus on the other senses that you're receiving. Okay? So that's a voluntary action. Tends to originate from your forebrain. Forebrain means front of your brain, where all the thinking is. So you damage the forebrain, you affect your thinking capacity. Then we have involuntary responses. Involuntary responses often require a stimuli. If not, it's very odd if you just kickstart a response without any stimulus. Can you imagine you start doing something without conscious thought? You wouldn't want that to happen either. So an involuntary response, another word that biologists use to describe involuntary response is a reflex action. You've heard before that sometimes you do things out of reflex. Reflex means it just happens by itself. And there are several reflex actions that we expect you to know, 2 case studies. The first reflex action we expect you to know is the reflex action of you drawing back your arm. What's the name of this reflex action? Yeah, it's like flinching. I just can't remember what this reflex action is called. Is there a name for it? Or the withdrawal reflex. Okay, in your notes, it's called a withdrawal reflex. If you voluntarily move your hand back, that's not a withdrawal reflex. The withdrawal reflex is if I prick you with a needle, or if you touch something really hot, you've experienced it before, you automatically retract your hand. That is a withdrawal reflex. That's the first case study we expect you to know. The second reflex we expect you to know is that of the knee jerk reflex. The one where you tried before. You hit your knee and then it kicks out. We are showing you these two case studies because the neural circuit here is slightly different. One of the neural circuits doesn't require a relay neuron in the circuit. That particular circuit is just a sensory and a motor neuron. The other one of the circuits comprises of both relay, sensory, and motor. Alright, we'll now watch a quick video to show you the various stages of the reflex action. You realize that having these three neurons alone is not enough. Because for you to even start a reflex action, you need to first have a stimulus. Something must have happened. Next, at the end of the stimulus, you must do something about it. And this video shows you the various stages.
There are some actions that you perform without even thinking. These are called reflex actions. A well-known reflex action is the knee jerk. Hit the knee in a particular spot and you can't help lifting your lower leg. So what's actually happening? First, stretch sensors in the muscle detect a sudden change. A nervous impulse travels along a nerve to the spinal cord. It passes through the spine, back down the leg, and causes the muscle to contract. Electrodes on the thigh pick up any electrical activity. Scientists use the trace on the oscilloscope to work out the speed of the response. It takes just a 30th of a second. The pathway taken by a nervous impulse during a reflex action is called a reflex arc. The impulse travels in an arc through the spinal cord. It bypasses the brain, which means you don't even think about it. Reflex actions happen so quickly because they travel by the shortest route.
Okay. Yesterday someone asked a question. Do all nerve impulses need to bypass the brain? No. Okay? Especially reflex actions. A clear example of that would be your knee-jerk reflex. So imagine this is my knee, this is my foot. Okay? In a knee-jerk reflex, actually a sensory neuron goes to the spinal cord. There is a relay neuron that relays it. Sorry, I think a knee-jerk is just sensory and motor, right? Yeah, okay? And then immediately there's a motor neuron that branches back to the knee. It doesn't even need to go to the brain. That's why it's so fast. There are other reflex actions that occur across your body. For example, your eyes. When you blink, right? If I were to try to poke your eye, you will naturally blink. That's a reflex action too. And the reflex action will start off where your eye is, go to the brain, maybe there's a relay, then you'll come back out. So reflex actions really depend on perhaps where it's located. If it's located somewhere near the brain area, you may expect that it just bypass through the brain. If it's located perhaps near your spinal area, then the reflex action will just bypass the spine, don't even go to the brain. The circuits of reflex actions could have a relay neuron, they could not have a relay neuron. It really depends. The reason why we share these two case studies is just to show you that there's a difference. Hiya.
Then habits like voluntary or involuntary?
Oh, are habits voluntary or involuntary? Like, you give me an example.
Let's say you have a bit of like maybe spinning a pen, and sometimes you sit down, you don't even think about it, you start spinning.
Oh yeah, I have to say, yeah, I don't know what is the biology behind that. Because it started off voluntary, right? Then after a while, you're not even thinking about it, right? So is that involuntary now?
It's very hard to like control our.
Okay, all I can say is that I do not think it's a reflex. Yeah? Reflex action requires some sort of a stimulus, and then after it is output. Don't know what's the stimulus here. Yes. Oh, you shake leg. Okay, when you shake leg on your chair, right, is that a reflex action? It seems involuntary, right? Okay. But actually, I believe, right, it is voluntary. I believe that it is still voluntary on your part, because actually, when you shake leg or when you hold your pen, right, your brain capacity, right, you're not quite able to focus that well during lesson, right, Henry? Yeah. Or do you focus better? Yeah. Because when you do all this, you still need an action one. So, okay, but I don't want to smoke you all. I honestly do not know these kind of habits, whether it falls into the realm of now involuntary. Because we definitely would not categorize it as a reflex. A lot of reflex actions have some sort of a biological need. It's often for your own safety one. Yeah? Right? A knee-jerk reflex is to help you balance when you stand, so you don't fall. The withdrawal reflex is so that you can withdraw yourself from danger. You twirling a pen, I don't know if it's life and death. Yeah? Okay. So, but this means that will you override the reflex? Technically you could. Okay? If you want to study about neuroscience in university, what you will learn is that in circuits, right, there are neurons that help to activate each other, and there are neurons that can inhibit each other. Right? At least that's what I learned. So when you are preventing yourself from doing something that perhaps would have been natural, sometimes there's an inhibitory effect happening between neurons. Okay? Yes, Shreya? That's a good question. I think it may be. Yeah? I think the feeling of ticklishness, is that a word? I think it's reflex because if you notice the areas that you're more tickled by, right, are areas where your vital organs are. Notice? I tickle your neck, she is very vulnerable space, right? Yeah? But then I touch your face, right? Do you feel as ticklish? Where are your most ticklish areas? No, you touch yourself, you won't feel anything, correct? Because why would you attack yourself? Right? That makes sense, right? So, if you want to, please tickle your friends now. Where is their most ticklish area? Sorry, boy and girl don't tickle each other, please. Yeah? Okay, but boy and girl, boy and boy, you want to touch, tickle each other, good. Yes? Oh, why do people have different ticklish areas? I think it may have to do with your sensory neurons. It could be in that region, you have less of the sensory neurons, and you don't feel as ticklish. Yeah, because ticklishness, it has to do with whether you sense the touch, right? Yeah, I'm just speculating. I speculate that ticklishness has to do with your protection. All your ticklish parts, right, all the parts where actually all your vital organs are. Okay? Say again? Yeah. Oh, okay. So, if we scroll down to the knee one, notice that there's no relay neuron here. Can you see? There's one sensory go up, then actually immediately touch the motor. Okay? Okay, so we only teaching you these two case studies just to prove a point that relay neurons could be present or absent. That's the point we want to prove. Okay? Okay, let's do a quick practice. Look at this neural circuit. Can you identify which one are the sensory neuron, which is the motor neuron, which is the relay neuron, which is the effector, last but not least, which is the receptor. You need a receptor to be able to start a stimulus. Okay, I think you have a few words to play with. Receptor, effector, sensory, neuron, motor neuron, relay neuron. I'm not sure if I key in all possible permutations of spelling for you or yes, what? Oh, why do you say that? Right, okay. Okay, then we look at this one over here. Oh. Okay, Janet, I don't know. But now that you point it out, right, it's interesting. You can go Google. I think I will go Google also. Janet made an interesting observation. She observed that almost like if you need the brain, then we will use relay neuron. But don't need the brain, maybe don't need.
I thought it's like relay as well as like the sensory neuron, then it relay to the neuron.
Yeah, that is the function of relay neuron. Yeah.
Like why? Like I didn't get why like the reaction don't need.
I suspect usually in biology, if something is not present, it could be that it is already very efficient, just connecting sensory to motor. Another thing is usually if you want speed, it could mean that it's a very important thing. Yeah. So maybe balance is actually very important for survival. Okay. Yes, Shafika. Okay, is blinking a reflex or is it voluntary? It would seem that we can do both, right? Yeah. You can control it, and it can be involuntary also, right? Yeah. So both are voluntary and involuntary. But then, just yesterday we learned somatic and autonomic nervous system. So we see blinking is both voluntary and involuntary. Is it better to park under somatic or autonomic? Okay. Thank you, Shafika, for bringing this up. Just previous lesson, we learned that we can separate our peripheral nervous system into somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Shafika asked, right, for blinking, right, when you blink, you can either blink voluntarily or involuntarily. Therefore, do you think it's controlled by the somatic nervous system or the autonomic? Okay? Somatic nervous system controls skeletal muscles. Any muscle that's on your skeleton. So your eyelid muscles, right, also part of your skeleton. And that also means, right, when you control your skeletal muscles, it can be voluntary, it can be involuntary. Autonomic nervous system controls everything else other than skeletal. It can be your gland, it can be smooth muscles, it can be your heart muscle, which is called cardiac muscle. But one thing is common, it is always involuntary. So I would say that if you have something that you can voluntarily control or involuntary, likely it is part of somatic. Okay? And also, another way you can tell is it part of your skeleton? Yeah? Your facial muscles, your jaw muscle, part of the skeleton. Eyelids also, part of the skeleton. I don't know, can any of you control your ears to move? Okay, I can't. My ear is mainly made out of cartilage. Some people, for some reason, can flap their ears. I've seen it before. Yeah? That's because, right, some people they have control over the muscles in their ear area and they can flap their ears. It's quite amazing sight. Okay, managed to do this section. Hope not too difficult. I hope that the only reason you're going wrong is because, whether you add S or no S, the spelling out. Oh, don't have to spell it out. Oh, what are you supposed to do? Drag and drop, is it? Okay. So, what does this mean for you? In every reflex action, you need receptors to detect. Yeah? You also need then to go to the sensory, then to the relay, then to the motor, which then brings it to the effector. All reflex action tends to have this circuit. Leave any one of this out, then you are missing out a complete answer. We go to this last reflex over here. You see another example of the reflex? Notice that we cover the same points again. Number one, there needs to be some sort of a receptor, and then so on and so forth. Any questions? Heart? Can you control how fast your heart beats? So it's involuntary. No? But is it also involuntary? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so I feel if your I say again, if your mindset is that somatic equals to voluntary, autonomic equals to involuntary, there's a higher chance you will be misunderstood. A better way, I think, to categorize these two is somatic, you control your skeletal muscles. Autonomic, you control other things, not your skeletal muscles. Your skeletal muscles, you can have voluntary and involuntary control over them. Yeah, like your blinking. Yeah, you can control your arm, right? Oh, okay. It is not voluntary and it could, right? So not everything has an involuntary action. Blinking is an example where you can voluntarily and involuntarily control. Yeah. But like as you said, your forearm, right? Actually you have also your forearm means you can voluntarily control. At the same time, you touch something hot, you automatically retract. That is involuntary. Okay? But the common thing is that it is all skeletal muscles. Yeah. Okay. So this part of the chapter is actually very, very simple. How the nervous system works together, they work together in circuits. They connect to each other and pass information from one to another. Let's go to practice makes progress. Attempt the MCQs as well as the structured questions. You may very well refer to your textbook, yeah? I'm also okay at this stage of your practice if you just copy and paste words from your OneNote direct into the answer. If you can find out which part of your textbook to extract information from, that's actually half the job done. Voluntary action what?
Do voluntary actions have sensory neurons?
So as I was saying just now, it could or could not involve. But if there's one thing common, you always just start with it. Like just now when you were catching a ruler, right? You were sensing something, right? But actually you had a choice there also to not do anything about it. So I would say that if you exclude the sensory neuron as part of the circuit, it's also fair game because actually the real decision could have come with or without the sensory neuron. Yeah.
So sometimes not.
If in the context of it, like the ruler just now, right, had you included sensory, I think it's still fair to say that's okay. If you decide to just pick up a pen, one could argue that you just start from the forebrain. But then you could also argue that you have to see the pen first, then you reach out, right? Yeah. So I think to me the baseline is the forebrain. Yeah, I'd like to remind you, next week, Jeanette will help me collect the Term 1 reviews. Don't do all the questions related to the eyeball. Then I'll do my best to mark it over the week, and then I'll return it to you in week 9, so that week 10 you have something to revise on. This one Term 1 review will be the submission score for just entered. Whereas last year, every homework I was tracking. So now it's just complete one thing. Yes?
So the result impulses for involuntary action, does it come from the sensory neurons?
Actually the starting point is the receptors.
So the receptor send the electric.
Yeah, then to the sensory neuron, then to the relay, then to the motor. Relay or not. Yes, Shreya?
What is the purpose of developing a relay neuron?
Okay, I suspect it has to do with number one, what's the maximum length the neuron can get. That's my first suspicion. You notice that the relay neuron tends to be just in the central nervous system, within the brain or along the spinal column, right? But sometimes some of the things we sense, like I sense something in the eye, but I want to move my goals after that, right? The distance away I think is quite large. So I think this one aspect that relay neurons can come in. They bridge the gap between what was sensing and what is the motor. I think a mixture of distance and what is the limit, physical, biological limit that a cell can truly be lengthwise. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure, but this is my suspicion. I think also another reason, right, is that having a relay neuron gives you that chance to stop yourself from acting. If your sensory merely connect to a motor, right, like in that reflex, right, you confirm kick. But if you bypass it, and if there's a relay neuron there, that relay neuron can relay to other relay neurons that can decide that, hey, we're not going to send it to the motor neuron after all. So I think relay neurons gives that buffer for you to think. Yeah, I think it increases the time within your central nervous system to think and process the information before it sends anything to the motor. Yeah. Okay, that's all for today. The next time I see you, the 3-period lesson, I will try to remember, but Jeanette, help me remember, we go to the lab, bio lab. For the non-biologists in this class, if you are interested to see an eyeball, you feel free to join in also. I really welcome you.